Okay, section 2.8 video part 2. We're at letter K. Now remember, before we started in the last video, at the beginning, I gave you the three functions that we're using to work these problems. So you have to refer back to those three functions to continue working this. Now, here's what makes this one a little different, which is why I broke the video where I stopped it. In all of the others that I've worked up till now, it was like I'll just slide it down, just show you. It was h minus f of x, f times g of x, h divided by g of x. It was of x every time. In this one, it is of 2. So, what do? Well, I first want you to break it apart like I asked you to break it apart when it was x, except now it's not x. If this was x, what would I write? F of x plus g of x. That's what I would do. But it's not of x. It's 2. So this is going to be f of 2 plus g of 2. So that'll be the first thing that you write. Now, what we've got to do is find f of 2. All right, let me put the functions back up just to remind you of what they were. Here were the functions. So here's what I'm about to do. I've got to find f of 2. This was the three functions that I gave you at the beginning of the lecture in the last video. Let me cover that up so it won't look as busy. There. So this is what we're looking for, and these are the three functions. So how do we find f of 2? What I'm going to do is go to the side, and to find f of 2, I'm going to put a 2 right here and right there. Then I'm going to go to the side and find g of 2. To find g of 2, I'm going to put a 2 right here. So I'm going to put a 2 here and work that out. And I'm going to put a 2 here and work that out. And that will be the f of 2 and the g of 2. All right, so let's go to the side. This is my scratch work over here. So remember, I had to find f of 2. So I'm going to put a 2 here and here. That's where this is. So it's 3 times 2 squared minus 5 times 2 minus 4. A while ago, I think I cut off that minus 4. So make sure you've got that in your notes. Now square first. And then 3 times 4 is 12. 5 times 2 is 10. 12 minus 10 is 2. And 2 minus 4 is negative 2. But I've got to do g of 2 also. Remember, I was doing f of 2 plus g of 2. So g of 2, you put 2 here. So that's 5 times 2, which is 10, minus 2, which is 8. So f of 2 is this. G of 2 is that. So replace f of 2 with negative 2, g of 2 with 8, and when I do, I get 6. Okay? Let's do 2 or 3 more like that one. So we'll do g minus f of negative 1. So this would be g of negative 1 minus f of negative 1. That would be the first thing I would write right there. Now, you've already copied this down. So the question is, where did this negative 7 come from and where did this 4 come from? You have to find g of negative 1. Now, how do I do that? Remember your original functions right here? Here they are. So to find g of negative 1, you're going to put negative 1 right there. So 5 times negative 1 is negative 5 minus 2, which is negative 7. Then f of negative 1, you're going to put f of negative 1, you plug it in here and here. And that's what I did on the side right here. G of negative 1, I found it. F of negative 1, I found it on my scratch work. Let me see what you're looking at here. Let's see. G of negative, yeah. Okay, G of negative 1, you plug negative 1 in for x. F of negative 1, you plug it in there and there. That's what these two numbers go right there. And then negative 7 minus 4, of course, is negative 11. Okay, this next one. F times G of 0. Do F of 0 times G of 0. Which is that. Now, again, just to show you my work. All right here. How do we find F of 0? You put a 0 right here and there. So if you put a 0 here and 0 there, you're just left with negative 4. Now, how do I find G of 0? Put a 0 here. So 5 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. So F of 0 is just negative 4. G of 0 is negative 2. That's where that comes from. And then when you multiply those, you get a positive 8. All right, last example here. G divided by H of 4. G divided by H of 4. So it would be G of 4 divided by H of 4. That's where that comes from. Now, how do you find G of 4? You go to the side and put 4 right here. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 minus 2 is 18. So G of 4 is 18. Now, how do we find H of 4? You put 4 right here. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, square root of 9 is 3. That's where that comes from. And then when you divide those, you get 6. That's my scratch work there on the side. Okay. Now, let's move on. And now still remember, keep looking back at these 3 equations right here. Just a second, just get my nose straight and squared away here. Okay, now this is the first time that we've done one with composition. So we're going to gear down a little bit on this one. All right, first on composition, you're just going to have to memorize this. F composed with G of X. If you'll remember, I gave you the definition of what composition is. Now, let me just show you an easy way to remember how to use the composition definition. So just look at this right here. Don't forget about everything else you're looking at here. All right. In composition, when you put your equal sign, whatever letter is first goes first. Then you're going to do a big parentheses, and then whatever 2 letters is left goes in the big parentheses. All right. So let's go to our problem. All right, what letter do you see here first? F. So that's the first letter you need to write. Then you're going to do a big parentheses. Now, what two letters is left? G of X. So always start out with that. Now, come right up under it. The first step's easy. Come right up under it, put the F back down, and put your big parentheses. Now, we're going to work from the inside out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put what G of X is inside this parentheses. Now remember, what was G of X? G of X was 5x minus 2. So in this big parentheses, replace G of X with 5x minus 2. Now the last step. Okay. Question before I show you the last step. If this was F of 7, just forget this right now. If this was F of 7, what would you do with that? What do you do with that 7? You take that 7, you go to the F function, which is right here, and you put, if this was 7, you put the 7 right here and right there. Well, the only difference is not F of 7, it's F of all of this. So everything you see in red, which is 5x minus 2, you're going to put it right here and right there. So it's going to be 3 times 5x minus 2 squared minus 5 times another 5x minus 2 minus 4. So every bit of this, what's in this parentheses, goes in x's place in the F function. All right, so that's where the next line comes from. So see what I did? There's the 3. Replace the x with 5x minus 2 squared minus 5 times another 5x minus 2 minus 4. All right. Orders of operations. Square first. Now again, if you don't remember where this comes from, go to the side and write out 5x minus 2, 5x minus 2, and FOIL that. If you FOIL that, this is what you get. Then you distribute, and combine your like terms. And again, we're not doing anything with this, so you don't have to try to factor it or do anything with it. So watch what just happened here, essentially. When you compose two functions, here's basically what you're doing. You're taking the function that's on the right, all of this function, and plugging it into that function. So you're taking all of G and plugging it into the F function. So we're taking all of this and putting it there and there. So if that's the case, would it affect your answer if you turn it around? It sure will. All right, let's do that. So this is the next example. All right, so what letter's first? G. So that's the letter I'll put first. Then I'll put a big parentheses. Then what two letters is left? F of X. That goes next, then close the big parentheses. Next step, bring the first letter down and the parentheses down. Now, he's back up here. In this big parentheses right here, put what f of x is right there. Well, f of x is all of this stuff. So put all of this right there. Now, take everything you see in red, all of this, go to the g function, which is right here, and put everything in red right there in x's place. So it's going to be 5 times all of this stuff minus 2. 5 times all of that stuff minus 2. 5 times all of that stuff minus 2. Then distribute and combine your like terms. Okay? Let's do another one. H composed with F. What letter's first? H. Then do a big parentheses. The two letters that's left, put those next. Then close your big parentheses. Next step, bring the H and bring the big parentheses down. Now, replace f of x with what it is. So in your big parentheses, put all of this again. There that is. Now, find h of this stuff. So I'm going to take all of this, what you see in red, h of all of this, and take all of that and go to the h function and put it right there. So it's going to be square root of 2 times that stuff right there in red plus 1. When I do, I get that. So you got square root, 2, and then in place of x, put that stuff plus 1. All right, distribute. 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 5 is 10, 2 times 4 is 8. Combine your like terms, but you can't do anything with that since it's under the square root. That's your answer. Okay? Let's do a few more on composition. Let's do this one. G composed with H. Okay, what letter's first? G. Then do a big parentheses. What two letters is next? H of x. That goes in there and close the big parentheses. Next step, bring the G down. All right, now, what do? What goes in big parentheses? Well, H of x goes right in this big parentheses right here. What is H of x? It's square root of 2x plus 1. So there that is. G of this. Now, how do I find G of this? Go to the G function, which is right here, and in place of x, right here, put what's in red. So it's going to be 5 times what's in red minus 2. 5 times what's in red minus 2. And you cannot multiply that under there because you can't distribute that number up under that square root. That is your answer. Okay, let's do another one. G composed with G. Now, don't panic. Don't make it harder than what it is. Just stay with the program. All right, what letter's first? G. So put that letter first. Then do your big parentheses. What two letters is left? G of x. That goes inside the big parentheses. Close the big parentheses. Now, next step, bring the G down and the big parentheses. Now, inside the big parentheses, in this big parentheses, I'm going to put what G of x is. What is G of x? It's 5x minus 2. So replace G of x with 5x minus 2. Now, the last step. Take what's in red, in this parentheses, go to the G function, which is right here, and in x's place, you're going to put 5x minus 2 right there. So it's going to be 5 times what's in red minus 2. 5 times what's in red minus 2. And then distribute and combine your like terms. Okay, 3 more examples here. All right, how is this one different? Because it's not x, it's 2. Now, it's still composition. So we're going to start out just like we did in the other one. What letter do you see first? F. Big parentheses. Now what goes next? G of, not X, G of what? 2. Then close your big parentheses. Now bring your F down. Now we've got to work what's inside here. G of 2. Now, how do I find G of 2? You come to the G function and put 2 into the G function. So you're going to take this 2 and put it right there and work that out. Now, you can do it on scratch work if you want to, but we'll just do it in our head. G of 2 would be 5 times 2, which is 10, and 10 minus 2 is 8. And I did that on scratch work over here. You see that there. Now, how do I find F of 8? You come to the F function and put 8 here and here. So it's going to be 3 times 8 squared minus 5 times 8 again minus 4. Orders of operations, exponents first. And then 3 times 64 is 192. 5 times 8 is 40. And 192 minus 40 is 152 minus 4, which is 148. So what you basically do in this problem is this. You take this number, plug it into that function, and get that answer. And then take that answer, plug it into that function to get your final answer. So if this is a number, your answer should be a number. But you're not plugging 2 into both of these. You only plug 2 into this one, get your answer, and then take that answer and plug it into that one. All right, let's do 2 more like that, and that will finish up this section and this video. So F composed with H of 3. What letter's first? F. Then you do a big parentheses. What 2 letters is next? H of 3. Close parentheses, close the big parentheses. All right, come right up under that. F, parentheses. Now we've got to find H of 3. How do you find H of 3? You come to the H function and put 3 right here. So 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. It's the square root of 7. I cannot get the square root of 7, so I'll leave it like that. Now, come to the F function, which is right here, and in X's place, right here and right there, put square root of 7. So it's going to be 3 times the square root of 7 squared minus 5 times another square root of 7 minus 4. And that's the next line. And then square root of 7 times square root of 7 is square root of 49, which is just a plain 7. So when you square that square root, it gets rid of it. And then 3 times 7 is 21, minus 5 square root of 7 minus 4. And I can subtract 21 minus 4, which is 17. But you can't subtract those. The only way you could subtract these is if this was 17 square root of 7 minus 5 square root of 7. That has to have a square root of 7 behind it too in order to subtract those. And last example, one just like it. What letter's first? H. Big parentheses. 2 letters that's left is F of negative 3. Now you only do this little thing I'm showing you when it's composition. Now bring the H down. Now, how do I find F of negative 3? F of negative 3, you put a negative 3 here and a negative 3 here and work that out. I did that over here on the side. Just slide it over where you can see it. That's my scratch work. F of negative 3, you put negative 3 there and do the math. And when you do, you get 38. That's where the 38 comes from. Then you take that 38 and go to the H function right here and put the 38 right there. So it's 2 times 38 plus 1. 2 times 38 plus 1 under the square root. And that's 76 plus 1, which is 77. All right, so that concludes this section. And also concludes this video. So section 2.8 is completely finished with the videos.